Jude and the Zombies, Part 8. Road Trip. I timed it carefully, expecting the worst. Jude would turn like them, but he didn't. He sat with me quietly, fidgeting and poked at his bandages. After 15 minutes had passed, I pulled back his bandage. The area around the bite had turned a deep red color, but it wasn't bleeding badly or pouring out clots of blood, so I tried not to worry. We gathered a few things as if we were going on a week's vacation, including new bandages and a first aid kit. We ate breakfast, then packed up a cooler and a bag of food. I was trying to be optimistic about the drive. Normally, it was only a 6-hour drive, but I had no idea what traffic conditions would be like, especially getting out of the city. I decided to take the neighbor's truck again. It would be challenging to get it through small openings between cars, but I figured it would be better at pushing things out of the way and off-roading. "How long do you think it'll take to get there?" Jude asked. "That depends on a lot of things," I said. Jude smiled a little. "Like traffic?" he said. I smiled back and even let out a small laugh. "Yeah, like traffic." Getting out of the city on the freeway was completely impossible. Every inch was blocked, including much of the shoulders. Turns out, folks don't really follow traffic laws when their neighbors are turning into monsters. We inched along a smaller highway, which was easier to maneuver through. I had already spent time clearing a lot of this road in the past. Downtown was a little more challenging. I'd cleared some areas, but it was still hard to get through. The farther we got from the city, the harder it became to get through. We ended up driving along a lot of grassy medians and moving cars off shoulders. I decided to teach the 10-year-old how to drive. We were almost to Portland when the nausea set in. I pulled over and sipped on some water and took deep breaths. I'd never gotten carsick driving before. I'd never gotten carsick, period, so I knew whatever was wrong with me was getting worse. The nausea was so bad I didn't even register the pounding in my head. Jude waited, watching me carefully. His bandages had turned a strange reddish-brown color, but I was pretty sure the bleeding had stopped. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I think I am now." I looked back up the road. It was a bit overcast, but the sun would break through every now and then. "Maybe you should drive." He laughed out loud for a moment, then stopped. "Really?" He didn't sound either excited or worried. I nodded as my stomach turned again. I opened the door to get more air and put my head between my knees. Suddenly, I vomited triumphantly. I splattered my shoes. "I don't think you're okay," Jude said. I wiped my mouth on my sleeve and looked over at him. "I feel better now, just tired." I tried to smile. "Want to drive?" Jude smiled a little. We scooted the seat as far forward as possible and tucked sweaters behind him for cushioning. "Can you reach?" I asked. My head pounded with every movement. "Yeah, just barely." "Good enough." I taught him to drive. It was funny how nervous he was. He caught on pretty quick. I guess driving isn't really rocket science when there's no one else on the road. He weaved between the cars as I dozed. I stayed awake until we were finally going over the mountain. "Okay, just stay on this. Follow the signs for Madras." I settled down using my sweatshirt as a pillow. I fell into a deep sleep. I swear I only slept a minute and a half when I felt him shake my shoulder. He said he nudged me first, but I hadn't moved. How long was I out? I looked around. The sun was disappearing behind the horizon. We were stopped in the middle of the highway facing a sign that said Madras and the population. I propped myself back up and looked around more, looking for those people who said they would be here. I didn't see anything. "Maybe they're actually in town," Jude said. "Yeah, probably. Let's get going," I said. "Keep your eyes peeled." It was like a ghost town driving through Madras. All the cars had been cleared out, if there were any cars to clear. This place was seriously out in the middle of nowhere. Everything just looked abandoned. There was no movement. There weren't even any zombies hanging around. We drove through the small towns near Madras, and still there was no movement. No indication of anyone there but us. We stopped and got out to stretch our legs. I looked at Jude's wrist. It had turned dark brown now. The area closest to the bite mark was turning black. I sighed, and Jude gently pulled his wrist back as if he could hide it from me. "Should we turn around? Did we miss them?" he asked. I shrugged. I had no idea why I'd come out here at all. "I don't know, I didn't see anything." I paused. We walked around. The walking helped with the nausea that had returned sometime during sleep. The sun had vanished from the sky. I wasn't even sure what time we'd left. We'd done it so quickly. And now here we were in the middle of nowhere, sort of lost, far from home, and suddenly I couldn't remember if I'd let the cat out before we left or not. I looked down at Jude. "I let her out," he said. We sat in the truck, got out a flashlight, and had some food. We spoke very little since my head was constantly pounding. It had been a warmish day for early fall, but I felt like I was pouring sweat. I sipped on water and closed my eyes to let my head pound in darkness. "Something's wrong," Jude said, watching me carefully. "Nothing is wrong, Jude." I rubbed my eyes but kept them closed. He looked down. "Something is," he said quietly. I tried to ignore his small voice. Of course something was wrong. I didn't know what, though. I only knew I had to get Jude to safety before whatever was wrong with me got worse. Jude nudged me. "It's dark," he said. "Maybe we should find somewhere to stay." I nodded and started the truck. "There's a hotel down the street. We can break into one of the rooms," I said. Jude nodded. "Or we could break into the lobby and take the keys," he said. Much more logical. I attempted a smile in his direction. It must have made it because he grinned back. We parked in front of the lobby and grabbed what little luggage we had. The lobby was a mess. I shouldn't have been surprised. Brochures for local attractions were scattered everywhere. The counter was splattered with old blood. Dried up clots could be seen here and there, but some of the keys were still hanging in a locked glass cabinet with a large crack through the door. Old school, actual keys. "So pick one." I motioned towards the box. Jude walked around to the back of the counter and picked up a stool that had been knocked over. He took off his coat and wrapped it around his elbow and aimed at the crack. He flung what seemed like his entire small frame into the cracked glass. It broke with little protest. He selected a key hanging under the number 12. "Where'd you learn that?" I asked as he hopped down. "I don't know, movies," he said. We walked out of the lobby to room 12. Jude handed me the key and started untwisting his coat. He flung the thing in his arms, swinging it from side to side like some sort of ninja weapon. I stopped and watched him doing this. He was just a kid, such a little kid. He was walking ahead of me when I heard the rustling in the bushes. "Jude," I said. I rushed up to his side, and a possum froze up, playing dead. We arrived at room 12 to see the door hanging open. "Guess we didn't need this," I said. We did a thorough search since the window was broken. No one was inside, but there were signs that someone's vacation had been interrupted, or someone's hideaway had been found. Bags lay open on a luggage rack. The bed was unmade, the towels were on the floor, and the toilet paper was ripped at an angle. I glanced around the room for clots of blood or splatters. I wasn't going to make Jude stay in a room with gore. I inspected the broken window and found some smears of what could only be blood, but that would be all right. Jude sat on the bed and picked up the remote. "No power," I said. "Oh, right, I forgot." He set the remote down again and looked around. "We should have brought some books or something." "We'll stay tonight, look around a bit tomorrow. If by noon we don't find anything, we can go home, okay?" I sat next to him and shivered. The wind blowing in the window was chilling me. Strange, seeing as how I was so hot this afternoon. Jude looked at me like I was crazy. "What?" I asked after a moment. "We can't leave," he said. "If there's no one here, we can't stay. There's nothing here," I said. "We have to find someone. You're sick. We can't just go back home and wait for you to die." Jude's eyes started to shine. "No, I'm fine. It's okay." I tried to put my arm around him. Stop saying you're fine, he shouted, shrugging off my arm and scooting away. You're not. You have to find someone to fix you. What'll happen if you die? I'll be alone again. Jude, they won't get you. You're tough. You survived. That's not what I meant, he shouted again. He put his small hands on my shoulders. If you die, I won't fight them. I won't run away. I'll be all alone again. I can't be by myself again. He shoved away from me and then scooted from the foot of the bed to the head of the bed, his back to me. Jude, I started to say. Shut up! Leave me alone, he said. I wanted so much to hug him, to lie and say that everything was fine, but the pounding in my head and the nausea in my stomach wouldn't let me. Suddenly, I saw clearly. Everything wasn't fine. Something was wrong with me. I lay on my side and closed my eyes. When I woke up, Jude was screaming. That seemed to be happening too often. I was a terrible mother. I opened my eyes, expecting to see Jude being torn to pieces in the bathroom or something, but he was right next to me. I was on the floor in a pool of foamy spittle and blood. My arms felt like lead as I lifted them to my face. Jude saw my eyes open. Mom, are you okay? Why'd you do that? He was screaming and crying at me. What? I muttered. My tongue felt huge in my mouth. What? I said again, sitting up. My stomach was churning. You were shaking, and you fell, and then you were bleeding and spitting, Jude said frantically. Oh, I said. I wiped my mouth and rubbed the sticky mess on my pants. Jude. He leaned close to me. He needed a bath. You stink. Go take a bath, I said. He looked at me like I was insane, but stood up anyway. I started to make my way to my feet too. He grabbed my grimy hands with no grimace at all and helped haul me up. Jude ran his bathwater, watching me carefully as I washed my face. I rinsed my mouth and spit out pink water. I stuck out my tongue at the mirror. There were deep gouges on the side that were still bleeding a little. Ah, I said. I bit my tongue. That's where the blood was coming from. I rinsed my mouth once more and sat on the floor. Jude was in the tub, the curtain drawn halfway, his clothes and brown bandages tossed haphazardly around it. His head poked around the side. I thought you were turning into one of them. I knew I should have run, but I couldn't leave you. He sat there looking at me. There was a long pause before I spoke. You're right, Jude. I'm really sick, but I don't know what's wrong. We have to find someone to fix me. I paused. 'Cause I can't leave you either, kiddo. He smiled, but it was sad. I didn't want to scare him by acknowledging that something was seriously wrong with me, but he knew I was lying, and I couldn't hide it anymore. Jude bathed while I feebly leaned over and crawled to his used-up bandages. I tossed them in the garbage. When Jude was finished in the bath, he drained the water and turned on the shower. I sat under the water. I was feeling a bit better, but my arms and legs still felt heavy and sore. I dreaded crawling back into the clothes I'd been traveling and sick in, but I'd left all my other clothes in my bag in the other room. I turned off the shower and grabbed a towel around the shower curtain. I peeked into the bathroom and found it empty. Jude? I shouted. Where are you? He came into the room, holding up a big, thick robe. I found this in the closet, he said. You left the bathroom? I asked. Yeah, after I washed your clothes, they were all bloody and gross, he said. Are you okay? I asked. For some reason, my eyes were pooling. Yeah, I was fast, Jude said. I took the robe from him and put it on. I stepped out of the shower and into the bedroom to find my clothes spread on 2 chairs by the broken window. My clothes were drying pretty well in the cool evening air. They'd probably be dry by morning. Once I changed my clothes, I rewrapped Jude's head and examined the bite on his wrist. It was blackening a bit around the edges, and he couldn't feel parts of it. The flesh was dying. I rubbed it with peroxide again, even though I knew it was useless. I wrapped it tightly and smiled. I didn't need to tell him what was happening. I'm sure he knew. We managed to remove the fake headboard from the wall and rested it on a table in front of the broken window to keep some of the night air out. Then we snuggled down into bed. Jude scooted surprisingly close to me. "What happened today when you fell off the bed?" Jude asked. "I think I had a seizure," I said. Jude was quiet. "What do you think is wrong?" he asked. "I don't know. We'll have to find someone who can help us tomorrow," I said. Jude nodded. He snuggled closer to me, and we fell asleep.